She had no employment history, no social media accounts, no digital trail. When the Mafia boss ordered a full background check on his new bodyguard, his intelligence team found almost nothing, not even a permanent address in the system. But when his entire security detail turned their guns on him in that Manhattan boardroom, he discovered exactly why the government would scrub someone's existence clean. 15 seconds, 12 bodies on the ground, and one question that would shatter everything. Who the hell was Zola Amari? If you believe competence should be valued over prejudice, hit subscribe to our channel. Only those who judge people unfairly won't. Silas the Serpent Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, Manhattan glittering below like broken glass. His reflection stared back, sharp suit, graying temples, eyes that hadn't slept properly in weeks. He was irritated beyond reason. He needed security, urgently. "How's the recruitment going?" He snapped into his phone. His head of operations sighed on the other end. "Boss, your requirements are borderline impossible. Elite tactical training, absolute discretion, unwavering loyalty. After 3 attempts on your life in 10 days, no reputable firm wants the liability. They're all convinced you're a dead man walking." Silas slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. Vehicles sabotaged outside critical meetings. Business deals collapsing at the 11th hour. Whispers in the underworld that the Sterling Syndicate was bleeding from the inside out. "Forget it," he muttered. "I'll handle it myself." But deep down, he knew he couldn't survive alone much longer. Someone inside his organization was selling him out, and he had no idea who. Across the city, Zola Amari was being let go, again. "You're supposed to be a security consultant, not a one-woman demolition crew," her supervisor said, refusing to meet her eyes. "You hospitalized 2 clients this week during sparring sessions. Our insurance won't cover this anymore. I'm sorry, but you need to go." Zola said nothing. She'd heard variations of this speech before. "This job is too small for someone like you," he continued, almost apologetically. "Whatever you really are, it's not a gym trainer. Go find something that fits." She grabbed her jacket and walked out into the humid New York afternoon. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former handler. "Use your brain before your hands. Z. You'll find work. Just remember, strategy before violence." Zola exhaled slowly. Easy for him to say. She was broke, effectively homeless, and running out of legitimate cover identities. "Boss, there's some kind of situation ahead. Streets blocked." Silas leaned forward in the back seat of his armored sedan, frustrated. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Go check it out." His driver stepped out. Through tinted windows, Silas watched the scene unfold in the middle of 5th Avenue. An elderly delivery man stood trembling beside a damaged luxury sports car. 3 men in expensive suits surrounded him, voices raised and hostile. "You scratched my car. That's $10,000 in damages. Pay up now." "I don't have that kind of money," the old man stammered. "My granddaughter needs her medication. I can barely afford." "Your family problems aren't my concern. Pay, or we make an example out of you right here." The delivery man stumbled backward, tears streaming down his weathered face. Silas reached for the door handle. This kind of street-level extortion was bad for business in his territory. But someone moved faster. A woman stepped between the thugs and the elderly man. Calm, controlled, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with size or volume. "Sir," she said evenly, addressing the lead extortionist, This man is clearly struggling. You're going too far." One of the men sneered. "None of your business, lady. Walk away before you get hurt." Zola didn't move. "I'll use reason first. Walk away now. Last chance." They laughed. "Reason? You broke nobodies don't understand how this city works. Do you know who we represent?" The largest one shoved her hard in the shoulder. "Mistake." Zola's hand snapped out like a striking snake. She caught his wrist, twisted at the joint, and used his own momentum to sweep his legs. He hit the pavement with a bone-jarring thud. The other two lunged at her simultaneously. 4 seconds later, all 3 men were on the ground, groaning and clutching their arms. Zola stood over them, breathing steady, posture relaxed. "Leave! Now!" They scrambled to their feet and ran. From inside the car, Silas sat frozen. Then he opened the door. "Hey!" he called out. "You! Come here!" Zola turned, studying him with sharp, calculating eyes. Designer suit, armored vehicle, bodyguards flanking him like chess pieces, trouble wearing an expensive watch. "What do you want?" she asked carefully. Silas stepped closer. "A job. I need a personal bodyguard." Zola raised an eyebrow. "That's random." "Life-saving," Silas corrected. "Very well paid." She crossed her arms. "And extremely dangerous." Silas smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Is that a problem?" Zola studied him for a long moment. She had no money, no job, no prospects, and something about this man told her he wasn't exaggerating about the danger. "Not for me," she said finally. 10 minutes later, Silas was back at Sterling Tower, phone pressed to his ear. "I want everything on that woman. Everything. You have 30 minutes. His team scrambled. His consigliere, Lucien, burst into the office, face tight with disapproval. "Boss, you can't be serious. You hired a random woman off the street?" She neutralized 3 armed extortionists in under 5 seconds. "In 30 minutes. I want her background, her training credentials, her employment history, everything." 28 minutes later, they called back. "Boss, she barely exists." Silas went still. "What?" "No substantial employment records, minimal social media presence, no permanent address on file, no military service records, no law enforcement background. It's like someone deliberately scrubbed her digital footprint clean." Silence filled the office. "She moves like someone with advanced combat training," another analyst added quietly. "Government level, maybe. Or something worse." Silas stared out the window at Zola, who stood in the street below, arms crossed, watching the traffic with the focused awareness of someone accustomed to threats. His paranoia ignited like gasoline catching fire. "Hire her officially," Lucien said slowly. "Boss, this is insanity. You know nothing about her. Do it." Zola stood on the sidewalk, unaware that her entire existence was about to be dissected by one of New York's most dangerous criminal organizations. She had no idea that the man who just hired her was fighting a war against shadows within his own syndicate. And she had no idea that the people hunting both of them, for very different reasons, had just been handed her exact location on a silver platter. Because 72 hours from now, 12 armed men would corner Silas in a boardroom 50 stories above the city. And Silas would finally understand exactly who he just hired. If you believe people who prey on the vulnerable deserve to be stopped, subscribe to our channel and comment what time you're watching this. Only those who enable injustice won't stand with us. The next morning, Silas's intelligence team stood in his office, pale-faced and visibly shaken. "Well," he demanded. The lead analyst swallowed hard. "Boss, we've run every database available. Government records, immigration files, banking systems, even black market networks. And? Nothing substantial. She exists on paper, but barely. No birth certificate we can verify. No passport trail. Minimal tax history. No employment records beyond sporadic contract work. No medical files. It's like she was deliberately constructed to be invisible." Silas's jaw tightened. "What do you mean, constructed?" Another analyst spoke up, voice trembling. "Boss, people don't just have minimal footprints like this. Not unless someone with serious resources erased them, or unless she was never meant to exist in civilian records at all." The room fell silent. Silas stared at the nearly empty folder on his desk. Who was this woman? When Zola walked through the gates of Sterling Tower that afternoon, every security guard turned to stare. Whispers erupted immediately. "That's her? The one the boss hired off the street? She doesn't look that dangerous. I heard she's just his latest impulsive mistake. You know how paranoid he's been. She looks capable. Did you see the way she moves?" Zola ignored them all. She'd dealt with far worse than office gossip. But as she walked past a cluster of veteran security personnel, one of them muttered loud enough for her to hear, "A woman as Sterling's personal bodyguard. This operation is finished." Zola stopped, turned, met his eyes directly. The man's smirk faltered. She said nothing, just held his gaze for 5 deliberate seconds, then continued walking. The guard shivered despite the warm afternoon air. Something in those eyes promised consequences he didn't want to imagine. That evening, Marcus Reeves arrived at Sterling Tower unannounced. He was an allied crime boss, wealthy, arrogant, and deeply traditional. Behind him stood 3 bodyguards, all broad-shouldered and stone-faced. "Sterling!" Reeves called out, voice dripping with mockery. "I heard the strangest rumor. They say you hired a woman as your personal bodyguard." Silas's expression remained neutral. "You heard correctly." Reeves laughed, loud and theatrical. "Brother, I know you like to be unconventional, but this is madness. A woman protecting the head of Sterling's syndicate? You'll be the laughingstock of New York." He gestured to his 3 bodyguards. "I brought you real protection. 3 of the best fighters money can buy. All men, all professionals. Forget this experiment." Zola stood near the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Reeves turned to her with a condescending smile. "Little lady, no offense, but this world isn't for you. Why don't you let the real professionals handle things?" Zola didn't move. "Are you challenging me?" she asked calmly. Reeves blinked. "What? You brought 3 men to prove a point, so prove it." The room went silent. One of Reeves's bodyguards stepped forward. "Miss, you're outnumbered. Which one of us do you want to fight first?" Zola glanced at her watch. "All 3 at once. I'm short on time." The bodyguards exchanged glances, then laughed. "She doesn't know her limits." "Fine," Reeves said with a smirk. "But don't complain when you lose." Zola stepped into the center of the room. "Begin." The fight lasted 18 seconds. The first bodyguard rushed forward with a straight punch. Zola sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to flip him onto his back. The second attacked from her left. She ducked under his swing, swept his legs, and he crashed into a desk. The third hesitated, then lunged desperately. Zola caught his arm mid-swing, twisted, and he dropped to his knees with a sharp cry of pain. All three were on the ground, groaning. Zola straightened her jacket, barely winded. The room was dead silent. Reeves's face had gone from smug to ashen. Silas stepped forward, voice cold and final. "Still think she's unqualified?" Silas called an emergency assembly that night. Every senior member of the Sterling Syndicate gathered in the main conference room. He stood at the front, Zola beside him. "Effective immediately, Zola Amari is my personal bodyguard. She answers only to me. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now." Silence. No one moved. But Reeves stood at the back, fists clenched, face burning with humiliation. "This is a mistake, Sterling," he said through gritted teeth. "You're making enemies you don't need. Then I'll deal with them." Reeves stormed out, his remaining entourage following close behind. As the doors slammed shut, Lucien leaned in and whispered, "Boss, the Reeves family won't let this go. They're hosting their annual gala next week. They'll use it to embarrass you publicly." Silas glanced at Zola. "Let them try." Later that night, Silas's staff prepared a private suite for Zola inside the Sterling Tower residential floors. "Wait," one of the housekeepers whispered. "She's moving into the executive wing? That's reserved for family and top lieutenants only." "That's what the boss ordered." "But only the inner circle lives here." "Exactly." Rumors spread like wildfire. By morning, half the staff believed Zola was Silas's secret lover. The other half thought she was a spy. When Zola overheard two guards whispering about it in the corridor, she stopped directly in front of them. "I'm here because it's protocol," she said flatly. "Personal bodyguards maintain close proximity to their assignments. Nothing more." The guards nodded quickly and hurried away, but Zola knew the rumors wouldn't stop. She didn't care. She had a job to do. As night fell, Silas stood on his office balcony overlooking Manhattan, a glass of bourbon in hand. Zola appeared silently beside him. "The gala is next week," he said without looking at her. "Reeves and his allies will be there. They'll try to humiliate me. Possibly worse. Then I'll be ready." Silas finally turned to face her. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into." Zola met his gaze unflinching. "Neither do you." The next evening, Silas's head of security cornered Zola in the corridor outside her suite. "You can't wear tactical gear to the gala," he said bluntly. "You'll stand out too much. We need you to blend in." Zola frowned. "I'm a bodyguard, not a guest." "Exactly. Which means you need to look like you belong there. The Reeves family will be watching for any excuse to embarrass the boss. Don't give them ammunition." An hour later, Zola emerged wearing a sleek black evening dress with strategic cuts that allowed for movement. Her hair was pulled back, and a discreet earpiece completed the look. She hated every second of it. When Silas saw her, he paused mid-step. "You clean up well?" "I feel ridiculous." "You look dangerous." "That's better." The Reeves Gala glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. New York's criminal elite mingled under the guise of celebration, but everyone knew the truth. This was a battlefield dressed in silk and diamonds. The moment Zola entered beside Silas, conversation stopped. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "Is that her? The woman he hired? She's actually stunning." "Doesn't matter how she looks. A bodyguard is still a bodyguard." "I heard she beat 3 men in under 20 seconds. "Impossible. That's just a rumor." Zola ignored them all, her eyes scanning the room for threats. Within minutes, a swarm of businessmen descended on Silas, each one desperate for his attention. Mr. Sterling, about that investment opportunity. Silas, I have a proposal that could triple your profits. Sterling, we need to discuss the partnership. Zola stepped forward, positioning herself between Silas and the crowd. Step back, 1 meter minimum. The men blinked in confusion. Excuse me? No one approaches within 1 meter of Mr. Sterling. Security protocol. An older man in an expensive tuxedo bristled. Young lady, do you know who I am? No. I'm Daniel Sterling, Silas's uncle. Zola didn't budge. Then you should know better than to violate security protocols, Uncle Daniel. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel's face turned red. How dare you speak to me like that in public? Silas stepped forward smoothly. Uncle Daniel, she's doing her job. Perhaps you could respect that. Daniel glared at both of them before storming off, muttering under his breath. 20 minutes later, Silas's extended family cornered him near the bar. Daniel led the charge, flanked by Silas's cousin, Victor Sterling, and several other relatives. Silas, this has gone too far, Daniel said sharply. Hiring that woman as your bodyguard? You're bringing disgrace to the Sterling family name. She's more qualified than anyone you've suggested. She's a nobody, Victor spat. An untrained outsider with no background, no credentials, no loyalty. For all we know, she's a spy sent to infiltrate our organization. Zola stood silently behind Silas, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Daniel pointed at her home. This woman is a threat to the family legacy. You're trusting a stranger with your life while pushing away your own blood. My own blood, Silas said coldly, has been trying to undermine me since my father died. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Zola spoke calmly, measured. If I may, Uncle Daniel, you said I'm unqualified and dangerous. Yet 10 minutes ago you tried to bypass security protocols to get close to Mr. Sterling. If I were truly a spy, wouldn't that make you reckless? And if I'm truly dangerous, wouldn't that make you foolish for provoking me? Daniel's mouth opened and closed without sound. Furthermore, Zola continued, you claim to care about family loyalty, yet you're publicly undermining your nephew at a gala hosted by his rivals. Interesting strategy. Victor stepped forward, furious. How dare you? She has a point, Silas said quietly. This conversation is over. As the night wore on, tension simmered beneath the polished surface. Zola never left Silas's side, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. But across the room, Lucian watched them both with an expression that promised nothing good. 3 days later, the assassination attempt came at dawn. Silas was scheduled to leave for a meeting across town. His armored sedan waited in the underground garage, engine idling, driver already behind the wheel. Wow, Zola's situation just got real. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe to keep up with her journey. Zola emerged from the elevator ahead of him, scanning the garage with practiced efficiency. Something felt wrong. The air pressure, the positioning of the security cameras, the way the driver kept checking his watch. Stop, she said sharply. Silas froze mid-step. What is it? Zola approached the vehicle slowly, circling it like a predator. She knelt beside the rear wheel well, pulled a small flashlight from her jacket, and aimed the beam underneath. Her expression went cold. Everyone back. Now. The driver started to protest, but Zola's tone left no room for argument. Out of the vehicle. Move. She pulled Silas behind a concrete pillar and called the bomb squad. 20 minutes later, they confirmed what she'd already known, a sophisticated C4 device wired to detonate on ignition. Silas stared at the vehicle, his face pale. "How did you—" "The hydraulics were sitting wrong. Someone tampered with the suspension to install the device." Lucien arrived moments later, face etched with concern. "Boss, this is escalating. We need to increase security protocols immediately. Full sweeps before every movement, rotating drivers, encrypted schedules." "The schedule was already encrypted," Silas said quietly. "Only Inner Circle has access." Lucien's expression didn't change. "Then we need to narrow the Inner Circle even further. Trust no one outside this room." Zola watched Lucien carefully as he spoke, noting the way his eyes never quite met Silas's, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the almost imperceptible relief when Silas agreed to his suggestions. She said nothing, but she started building a file in her mind. Patterns, inconsistencies, timing. The pieces were beginning to align. 4 days after the car bomb incident, Lucien arranged an emergency meeting. "Boss, we need to address the security breaches with the full leadership," he said, voice urgent. "I've secured a conference room in the Apex Tower downtown, 53rd floor, completely isolated. Only our most trusted people. No outside interference." Silas looked exhausted. The paranoia was wearing him down, eroding his usual sharp judgment. "Who's attending?" "Just the Inner Circle. You, me, the senior lieutenants, and your personal security detail. 12 people total. Everyone's been vetted multiple times." "Fine. Schedule it for tomorrow afternoon." The next day, Zola's instincts screamed warnings the moment they entered the Apex Tower. The building was too quiet. The security checkpoints too efficient. The conference room too perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a single entrance. 12 chairs arranged in a precise circle. A kill box. She positioned herself near the door, back to the wall, scanning every face in the room. 12 men Silas had trusted for years, all of them wearing identical expressions of false calm. Lucien began the meeting with discussions of territory, finance, and the recent security failures. His voice was smooth, practiced, reassuring. Silas listened, arms crossed, trying to focus despite his exhaustion. Then, mid-sentence, Lucien's hand moved, a subtle gesture, barely noticeable. Instantly, every security guard in the room drew their weapons, 12 guns aimed directly at Silas. The temperature dropped like a stone. Silas went absolutely still, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. "Lucien?" Lucien's expression transformed from concerned advisor to something colder, more calculated. "I'm sorry, Silas. Truly. But this has been inevitable since your father died." "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 3 years ago. Taking what's mine." Silas's voice barely held steady. "You've been the leak. Not just a leak, a bridge. I've been selling your intelligence to rival syndicates and foreign buyers since before you took over. The Kozlov family offered me the Sterling Empire in exchange for your elimination. Clean transfer of power. No messy war." Silas felt the walls closing in. 12 guns. 1 exit blocked. 53 floors above the street. No escape. "You were my father's most trusted advisor," he said quietly, stalling for seconds he didn't have. "Your father was a sentimental fool who let tradition blind him to opportunity. You inherited that weakness." Lucien nodded to the guards. "Make it clean." 12 fingers tightened on 12 triggers. Zola moved. What happened next defied physics and training, and everything the guards thought they understood about combat. She closed the distance to the nearest guard before his brain registered movement. Her hand struck his wrist with surgical precision. The gun clattered away. She used his body as a shield, spinning him into two others. They collided in a tangle of limbs. 4 seconds. The next guard fired. Zola had already moved. The bullet shattered glass behind where she'd been standing. She disarmed him with a wrist lock that snapped bone, then drove her elbow into his temple. He dropped. 7 seconds. 2 guards rushed her simultaneously from opposite sides. She dropped low, swept one's legs, used his falling momentum to propel herself upward into a devastating strike against the second's jaw. Both hit the floor. 11 seconds. The remaining guards hesitated. Fatal mistake. Zola moved through them like a storm through paper. Disarms, joint locks, pressure point strikes delivered with mechanical efficiency. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Every movement calculated for maximum effect with minimum energy. 15 seconds. 12 bodies on the ground. Some unconscious. Others groaning, clutching broken bones and crushed nerve clusters. Lucienne bolted for the door. Zola was faster. She caught him by the collar, drove him face first into the conference table, and zip-tied his wrists behind his back with a plastic restraint that appeared from nowhere. The boardroom fell silent except for ragged breathing and distant groans. Silas stood frozen against the window, his world shattered and rebuilt in 15 seconds. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Zola stood over Lucienne's restrained body, then turned to face Silas. Her expression carried no triumph, no satisfaction, only cold, professional assessment. "My name is Zola Amari, former CIA Black Ops specialist, currently contracted to the intelligence community's counterintelligence division." Silas felt the room tilt. "Your government. I was assigned to identify and neutralize a high-level intelligence leak compromising national security operations. Lucian wasn't just selling your syndicate secrets, Silas. He was selling classified government information obtained through your organization's connections to foreign military contractors and corrupt federal officials." Lucienne spat blood onto the marble floor. "You can't prove anything. I have 3 years of documented communications, financial transfers, and recorded conversations. You're finished." Silas's mind raced through implications, betrayals, the entire foundation of his world cracking beneath him. "I was bait. You were the only way to get close enough to confirm his identity without triggering a purge. Your paranoia about internal leaks gave me the perfect cover. I needed someone inside his trust circle who could hire me without suspicion. The street fight. You staged it. I created the opportunity. You took it. Your instincts weren't wrong, Silas. You just trusted the wrong person." Silas looked at the bodies scattered across his boardroom, then at Lucienne, the man his father had trusted, the advisor who'd helped build the Sterling Empire while simultaneously selling it piece by piece to the highest bidder. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "You have a choice. I disappear. Federal agents arrive within the hour, and your organization gets dismantled during the investigation. Or you work with me. We dismantle Lucienne's network together, identify every contact, every buyer, every corrupt official he compromised. You provide access and intelligence. I provide protection and resources. We clean this up before it destroys everything your father built." Silas studied her. This woman who'd infiltrated his life, saved him, and shattered every assumption he'd held about power and loyalty. "Partnership," he said finally. "Not surrender." Zola nodded. "Partnership." 3 months later, Silas stood in his rebuilt boardroom, watching federal agents escort the last of Lucian's network out of Sterling Tower in handcuffs. 17 corrupt officials, 9 foreign intelligence operatives, and 4 rival syndicate leaders, all exposed through the intelligence Zola had gathered and Silas had helped verify. Zola appeared beside him, no longer wearing evening dresses or playing the role of bodyguard. She wore tactical gear now, her CIA credentials visible on her belt. "The Intelligence Committee is satisfied," she said. "Lucian's operation is completely dismantled. You upheld your end of the agreement." "And mine?" Silas asked. "What happens to the Sterling Syndicate?" "That's above my clearance. But off the record? You helped prevent a major security breach that would have compromised operations across 3 continents. People remember that." Silas turned to face her. "You could have arrested me too, leveraged the situation for a bigger takedown. That wasn't my mission. And despite what you believe about yourself, Silas, you're not the monster you pretend to be. So you just needed someone to show you the difference between loyalty and blind trust." She extended her hand. "It's been educational." Silas shook it, then surprised himself by holding on a moment longer. "If you ever need someone who understands how the underworld really works, I'll know where to find you." Zola walked toward the elevator, then paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, Sterling, you made the right choice. Not many men in your position would have." The doors closed, and she was gone. Silas returned to the window overlooking Manhattan. His empire was smaller now, cleaner, built on foundations he could actually trust. His father would have been disappointed by the compromise, but his father had also trusted Lucien. Without question. Sometimes strength wasn't about control. Sometimes it was about knowing when to let someone else see the truth you'd been too proud to acknowledge. Silas picked up his phone and made a call to his remaining inner circle. "New protocols, effective immediately. No more blind loyalty, no more assumptions. We verify everything." He paused, then added quietly, "And if anyone ever approaches you claiming to be a random bodyguard looking for work, take them seriously." Because Silas Sterling had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. The most dangerous people aren't always the ones you're watching for. Sometimes they're the ones you never see coming until they save your life. If this story showed you that competence and courage come in unexpected forms, and that real loyalty means telling hard truths instead of comfortable lies, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that challenge assumptions and celebrate those brave enough to stand alone against impossible odds.